Hello and welcome to Peace Propaganda, a twice weekly show about living peacefully. This is Adam.
And this is Becky.
Thanks so much for tuning in again. We got a pretty wonderful show for you planned today. As I'm sure you know by now, diligent listeners will know that we do the show twice a week, and this is the Saturday show, which is generally the listener feedback show. Unlike the Wednesday show, which is a little bit more esoteric. We had a lot of fun with that this past Wednesday. Highly encourage you to tune into that one. Things get wild.
So I want to start off with a celebration because here at Unicorn Double Rainbow Studios, we have some new mic wind covers. So now our P's won't sound as explosive.
Yes. Yes,
so I'm sure you're all really excited about that.
The radio genius that I am decided to pick a name with 3 P's in it. So we had to upgrade the equipment here in the studio to accommodate that.
All right. So the other thing is the Saturday show kind of brought in a lot of discussion on Reddit.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, you got to do quite a discussion with some of the listeners that
Indeed.
I saw.
Yeah, so actually, I wanted to address a little bit of the conversation because I said something that got a lot of debate, but I want to make sure that my point is clear. What I said was my understanding is that Jesus was a rich man.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I saw.
And a lot of people, sort of disagreed with that just outright. And I guess, I don't want to argue about that. I don't know, so I can't argue about it. I don't know what he was. But but the point that I was making really is that wealth is a function of your ability to give and receive.
What do you mean by that?
So basically, it's your capacity to connect to your natural abilities and talents and then your willingness to share them with the rest of the world. And I think that when you connect with those abilities and are willing to share them with the world, it's really difficult to remain poor, because when you're giving in that way, in such a significant way, when you're giving of yourself, when you're giving to the world, it's just natural that you attract people, and people want to, thank you for what you're giving. They want to give back.
I like to think so.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's just a natural outcome. I think that's how a lot of people in business work. The ones who are honest, at least, right?
Yeah.
And so
if you can find them.
Yeah. So I guess the point is that it's about sort of it's not about the money, the material wealth that comes to you. It's about the underlying sort of connection to the world that brings the material wealth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
so
sure.
Yeah.
And certainly somebody as with a reputation like Jesus supposedly had. I mean, among the people who weren't trying to crucify him, of course. But it seems like what you're saying makes a bit of sense. But
he was a popular guy, right?
I imagine so.
And the other point to make is that there's a difference between being poor and being so generous that you don't keep much of your wealth for yourself. Right? So like if you are someone who's making $1 million and then giving $1 million back to the world, that you're not a poor person, right?
Right.
And it's important to differentiate, because there are people in the world today who are impoverished not by choice but by force.
Of course.
Right? And
Lots
so
of them.
Yeah. And so that's a very different thing, and it's sort of, important to recognize that there's a difference between being impoverished by force and just being a generous person who's actually wealthy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and then there's all kinds of wacky ways to be supposedly poor too. Yeah, I think the original samurai order, they would take an oath. They couldn't have any more than they could carry. So what they would do they would just have like peasant farmers carry all their stuff.
and you got to jump through the hoops when there are rules.
Ancient Japanese bureaucracy. But well, that's interesting. Well, I imagine that not every listener agrees with your assessment of Jesus. I say that because for everyone who has ever heard of Jesus, there's a different interpretation
Right.
of Jesus, as there is with anything religious. So if you want to get in on that conversation, definitely email us here at the show, host.peacepropaganda@gmail.com, or you can just find that Reddit discussion. It was on Reddit r/anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah.
It's where we post the show a lot of times. Or you can always comment on SoundCloud, which I really enjoy. I've been commenting on some other shows on SoundCloud. I think they have a really nice platform there.
Yeah.
Sort of second to none.
I mean, basically anywhere where you can reach us, we're happy to correspond with you guys. So
That's right, and we'll respond on the show as you just witnessed. All right, and so now we want to talk a little bit about another listener had emailed us a few things, a couple of articles, and a clip from the Kaiser Report. Some of you may be familiar with Max Kaiser. He hosts a show on RT.
he's a fun personality.
Yeah, that's for sure. He's a little kooky. Right, but that's kind of his shtick, we
like him.
Yeah, he tries to put himself out there as kind of like a funny man to try to put economic ideas out there for people who might not otherwise find them entertaining. I think he does a pretty successful job of it, and so the person who emailed the show is Bill, longtime listener. He apparently has heard every single episode, so thank you for that, Bill. Yeah, and he wanted to bring to our attention the brewing currency war. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so I guess so. Specifically, let me step back. Currency war, the idea being, of course, that you would try to undermine the system by undermining its currency. That's sort of the idea behind it. And so Max Kaiser had a guest on his show where they were talking about the situation in Crimea between the United States and Russia, and sort of how China comes into that, and Iran. And I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I have a bit of a education in economics, but I don't really follow the news much unless
me either.
Unless a listener brings it to my attention. So we actually want to play a little bit of a clip to set up this discussion for you. It's only about a minute long. It's from the Kaiser Report, and he's interviewing a guest who's talking about a book that he just wrote. So here it is. We'll be right back after that.
Financial warfare. It's a new form of what's called asymmetric warfare. The basic idea is there is not a military in the world that can stand up to the U.S. military. Our Navy, our Air Force, our Strategic Command, our Special Operations Command, our technological capability are second to none. Nobody can beat the United States head on head in what's called kinetic warfare, which is things that shoot or explode. But when you go into asymmetric warfare, what is that? Well, it could be biological, chemical, radiological, weapons of mass destruction, cyber warfare, and now the new entry is financial warfare. That's a much more level playing field.
That is a much more level playing field.
Mm-hmm.
I think as many listeners will identify, I don't really care much about, Russia's political aspirations. I don't care much about their currency games, unto itself, but I do care about the idea of decentralization, and I do care about the idea of sort of breaking apart the hegemony of the U.S. petrodollar. Yep. I think it has a lot of poisonous effects around the world. For those of you who may not know, briefly, the idea of the petrodollar is that every oil contract in the world is denominated in terms of U.S. dollars, and it has to be traded for U.S. dollars.
And the U.S. has spent a lot of resources sort of propping that up, right? So
Right. So what it does is it forces demand for the U.S. dollar
Right.
on the global economy. If China buys oil from Saudi Arabia, they're paying for it in U.S. dollars.
Because they've agreed that they're going to do that, but I guess what we're starting to see is different countries saying,
not so much.
we're not gonna do it anymore.
Right, and that's to me that's definitely a positive development. Oh, we got the music coming up here, but we're going to talk more about how the U.S. petrodollar could collapse and maybe how Bitcoin could help with it. Of course, it all comes back to that here. Keep listening to Peace Propaganda. We'll be right back. I want to take this opportunity to tell you about Sean's Outpost, a homeless outreach program which has provided over 20,000 meals to the homeless in Northwest Florida. They're also funded entirely through Bitcoin donations. They are proving that we can address the problems in our community without the state, without its predatory welfare programs, and without its Ponzi money. Recently, Sean's Outpost launched its newest, boldest initiative, Satoshi Forest, a 9-acre homeless sanctuary where they are teaching permaculture, aquaponics, and self-sufficiency to the homeless residents. No one sticks a gun in anyone's face and makes them donate to Sean's Outpost, and yet, every day, people do. Please consider donating to this inspiring cause. Visit seansoutpost.com. That's SEANS outpost.com. Oh, welcome back to Peace Propaganda, the Saturday show. We're talking about some listener feedback here, and we were just talking about the U.S. petrodollar and the potential collapse of that global hegemony. But first, I actually want to extend a heartfelt thank you to a couple of listeners who took the time to use our Amazon affiliate link. That was amazing. You heard us talking earlier about how we upgraded the equipment in the studio. Well, that's no coincidence. We put every dime of that into the studio here at the Unicorn Double Rainbow Studios.
We make it happen together, folks.
That's right. So again, thank you so much. And if this is your first time listening, please be aware we have our Amazon affiliate link that you can click on, do all your Amazon shopping through at no cost to you. Peace Propaganda will get a small commission, and it helps us keep the lights on here at the Double Rainbow Unicorn Studios. Unicorn Double Rainbow Studios.
We got to figure out the order.
I'll get it. There's a leprechaun in there somewhere, I think.
Probably.
Hey, but if you like what you're listening to, or if you hate what you're listening to, let us know at host.peacepropaganda@gmail.com. Or, of course, you can find us on Twitter at Peace Podcast, Facebook at Peace Propaganda. We got the YouTube channel. I confess I'm an episode behind on that, but we all get busy from time to time, but the newest episode will be up very soon, I promise. And of course you can always contact us on Reddit. I'm Mises2Pieces. That's MISES, the number 2, and then pieces like War and Peace.
And I'm Beck11, BECK11.
Yours is so much easier than mine. I need to just get a new account or something.
But yours is pretty clever. I enjoy it.
Is it? Thank you. Cleverness isn't getting any easier to say over the air, though.
No, I mean that's
I just need to register for Peace Propaganda. Oh no! Now the listeners are going to do that. It's already taken. Don't try. So we were just talking about the U.S. petrodollar and the idea that maybe someday we might see the hegemony of the U.S. dollar, the cracks in the armor might be exposed, and we might not all have to live under this tyrannical fiat system.
I think maybe is probably an understatement. I mean, it kind of has to happen, and
it can't last forever,
right? And we've heard the sort of what is it, 30 or 40 year cycle of fiat currencies.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so I think the idea is that sort of in the life of currency systems, every 40 years we sort of have this turnover where some drastic change takes place. And I guess the last one was in the 70s when Nixon cut the gold standard, and we went to Bretton Woods where everyone was tied to the dollar. But that 40-year window has certainly expired at this point, and it's really just being propped up by the U.S. military, right?
Yeah.
Around the world. But we're starting to see that fail, and so we're definitely sort of going into this time where we should probably expect to see some pretty significant changes in the price of the dollar.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to look into that. I haven't heard about that 30 to 40, because I'm thinking about it. And about 40 years before that was when the Federal Reserve was implemented. Well, I guess it would have been about 50 or so years, but close enough for government work.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a rough.
Yeah, that's okay. That's interesting hypothesis. Yeah, and I definitely agree. it can't last forever.
Right.
I mean, the system that we have now is just insane.
Yeah.
The idea that people who have never set foot on American soil, they don't speak English, they've never held a dollar, but yet they're contracting for, in the billions
Right.
in U.S. dollars.
Like totally like, what's the word? Just contrived.
Oh,
right?
yeah. It's a house of mirrors. It's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, there's also, I've heard a lot of people talk about the fact that no fiat, the success rate of fiat currencies is 0%, right? They all fail.
They all fail eventually.
So, we should be preparing ourselves for that, I think.
That's true. So so in that regard, I think it's great, the idea that Russia and China might be breaking that, which isn't to say that they have noble goals necessarily.
No, of course.
I assume, in fact, that since they're national governments, that they have malicious goals. But I'll take a win where I can get it. And what's interesting to me is that you even see this stuff going on in the U.S. People trying to break the monopoly on money services in the United States. And of course, it's no secret, I'm talking about Bitcoin, talking about cryptocurrencies. Even Litecoin, Dogecoin, any of them. The idea that someone would be transacting for a good or service and it would never involve a U.S. dollar is undermining the system.
Yeah, and it's super exciting. It's
Right.
like, if I for the most part, I avoid all aspects of this system in my life to the best of my ability.
Right.
And so when something comes along that gives me that opportunity, I'm always right on it,
Exactly.
Because it's like, because it's sort of like a really easy way to simplify your life and remove those dependencies when especially with Bitcoin,
Right.
to give people the power to basically be their own bank.
Exactly.
Is a beautiful thing.
That's amazing. And so, since we're sort of talking economics here, the reason that it's a good thing is because you're decreasing demand for US dollars. And so the less that a US dollar is worth, then that ipso facto means that the central bankers, the people who want to control your life through the controlling of currency, have less value at their disposal.
They just
If
have
the
less
dollar,
control.
if 100 years from now, if the dollar is worth zero, it won't matter how many dollars they can print
Right.
because it's worth zero.
Right.
It won't matter. And so there's a scale there. The less the money is worth, the less power they have over you.
Right.
And a common criticism that I hear about Bitcoin is, but you're buying it in US dollars, and then you're gonna, if you want to buy certain things, then you're gonna cash it out into US dollars. And that's certainly true for some people. Some people buy them in US dollars, a lot of people, but increasingly you see just people, they'll do a service or they'll provide a good. And there was never U.S. dollar in that transaction.
Right. I mean, the whole idea is that, well, I mean, I won't say the whole idea, but for a lot of people, the idea of Bitcoin is that it's a new economy that they're actually transitioning into.
Right.
And so they are indeed performing services and receiving their income in the form of Bitcoin. Not a lot of people right now, but it's
a growing number.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people now who pay their rent in Bitcoins. I know Sean's Outpost, he pays the mortgage on the land.
Right.
He pays that in Bitcoins.
Yeah.
And that's 19 acres. I mean, it's not
like
a small
a big deal.
amount. Yeah. At the Texas Bitcoin conference, somebody showed up in a Maserati paid for in Bitcoin.
Wow.
That's a big deal.
I've also heard Jeff Berwick, his thing in Chile. What is it called?
Gulch Chile
accepts Bitcoin for property
you
there.
You can buy a house in Bitcoin.
That's my
very
understanding.
Cool.
I'm not positive about
Jeff
that.
Berwick's cool guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Actually, I saw him post on Facebook the other day. What's the easiest way to get to buy 1.5 million in Bitcoin? I was like, wow.
He posted that?
Yeah.
What a crazy guy. If you're not familiar with Jeff Berwick, he hosts Anarchast. Just type in Anarchast, like a broadcast in YouTube or in in SoundCloud, and it'll come right up.
It's a fun show. It's like really laid back. I enjoy watching it. He's always got his wine and his cigarette.
Yeah, definitely check that out. So I hope that answers your. Well, I guess you didn't really pose a question to us, Bill, but you kind of wanted to hear us talk about it, and so that's my thought on that at least.
The other thing about Bitcoin that people will usually use as a reason why it couldn't be a viable currency is its volatility. So Well, it sounds like the music is coming up, but we'll get back to this.
Hey, Becky, I was having this dream the other night where I was taking a test and then all my teeth fell out and then everybody died.
Wow, Adam, that sounds pretty intense, but there are people who can help you interpret those.
Really? Where?
Well, during the last weekend in April, students from the School of Metaphysics, aided by professional dream coaches from dreamschool.org, will be fielding calls from around the world, answering questions about dreams and interpreting them for 54 hours straight.
Wow, how can I get in contact with them?
You can call them at 773-427-0155 from 6 p.m. Central Time on April 25th to midnight on April 27th with your dream questions.
Wow, I'm definitely going to do that. Where can I find more information?
They have a Facebook page called 26th Annual National Dream Hotline Weekend.
26th Annual National Dream Hotline Weekend. I'm definitely going to go to that Facebook page.
Good. It sounds like you have some real stuff to work out. All right, we're back. So I was sort of mid-thought before the break about how a lot of times people will say that Bitcoin can't be a viable currency because it's too volatile, and they'll use the example that you make your income in Bitcoin, but you have to define it in US dollars and then calculate how much Bitcoin that is each time because it's so volatile. And I guess, the thing about that is that I've gotten from Andreas Antonopoulos is that it's a really small market right now, and so it's sort of like a yacht floating next to the Titanic, and it's like getting all bounced. It feels the waves really strongly because it's such a small market. Right. But once we get sort of mass adoption, it's going to be much more stable,
right?
And you will be able to be paid, defined in an amount in Bitcoins at some point in the future. It's just not right now because we're at the beginning.
Yeah, and it's sort of a chicken and egg thing too. It's funny, people that I see sometimes on Facebook, who don't know much about economics will talk about, Bitcoin is so useless because the value is so volatile, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, of course it's volatile. There's not a huge amount of money in it. So, if the market cap is $500 million and someone buys $10 million worth,
that's going to move the market.
That's a substantial amount of the market. Whereas if the market cap is $5 billion and someone buys 10 million, that changes far less.
Right.
It's the reason why if you buy a bag of fries at McDonald's, it doesn't change it much. But if you buy Idaho, it's going to change the price of fries.
That's good. I like it.
All right. So we actually have one more clip here from that same interview on the Kaiser Report, where they sort of talk about the idea of how to resist the currency manipulations of the US dollar. So we'll get right into that. It's only about 45 seconds, and we'll be right back after that.
In chapters 1 and 2, we talked about a war game conducted under sponsorship of the Pentagon at a top secret weapons laboratory in 2009. Now, in that war game, I was one of the facilitators, and I also played on the China team. But with my partners who were on the Russia team, we put forward a plan whereby Russia and China would acquire gold, use it to back a new currency, turn their back on the dollar, and basically try to sink the dollar as the global reserve currency. Since then, since 2009, Russia has increased its gold reserves by 70%. China has increased its gold reserves by several 100%.
So there you go, and that's sort of the argument put forward by the hard money crowd too. Any sort of gold or silver bug Austrian will tell you that the more gold and silver that you transact in, then the less valuable the U.S. dollar is. And I mean, I don't really consider myself a gold bug. I'm not antagonistic to that idea, but in that way, they're right. I mean, the more people who are transacting, not in dollars backed by gold, like some people erroneously suggest, but in literal gold and silver, then yeah, of course, that's going to undermine the value of the U.S. dollar.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the more people transfer their wealth into hard assets, and the reason
really anything,
right?
That's
yeah,
the point.
But in particular, the reason that people transfer their wealth into hard assets is because they don't trust the fiat currency that their country is handing out.
Yeah.
But
in this case, it's entire national governments.
Right. And I'm not sure what the definition of gold bug is. I mean, I get the sense that it implies some sort of obsession. But
I've heard some people, I think Peter Schiff is a self-described gold bug, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an insult.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, right. I think it's worth mentioning that I really think that at this point it's time to be getting out of the US dollar. And, a good way to do that is to move your wealth into hard assets, for example, gold and silver.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, I would flip that, but certainly consult your local futurologist or, palm reader to determine your own investment advice. We're just talking heads. But I have a lot more faith in cryptocurrency than I do in hard assets. But I'm familiar with the arguments on both sides. Gold certainly has a longer history. Then again, the cowrie shell has more history than gold. Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert either, but I do get the sense that, Bitcoin is a very risky investment still. So nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, 100 all in, right? Well, some people did, and they're
sure.
rich.
Yeah,
as all get out.
But there's no way that they would tell you, oh, it was totally a safe investment, right?
That's true.
Like they're in it and they know, right? But I think gold and silver are pretty, it's pretty safe to say that they're only going to go up if the dollar goes down, right? Because there are
assuming the dollar goes down, it's pretty safe to say that they will go up relative to the dollar. Yeah, I mean, everything will go up relative to the dollar.
Yeah, okay. But the other argument that I've heard is that, you've got countries like China and Russia sort of stockpiling gold, and then maybe the question that we should ask ourselves is should maybe we should be doing what those countries are doing. Maybe they know something that we don't know.
See, that's actually exactly what makes me wary of gold and silver, is because, for one, anything that a national government is doing, my default is to do the opposite, because I assume that they don't know what they're doing. But also, like we talked about it a couple episodes ago, the Bitcoin market is heavily manipulated, and I think this is the
gold market.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, the gold market. No, the Bitcoin market is less manipulated, but yes, the gold market is heavily manipulated, and it's manipulated. A lot of people think by governments such as Russia and China, and almost certainly England and the U.S. I mean, that's pretty much out in the open that they've been manipulating the gold market.
Right.
So that's what makes me wary of it. Yeah, I get the argument that Bitcoin is more volatile, but I guess what I'm saying is I can't tell you. I can't tell anyone what to do.
Well, so I think one thing to note is that Bitcoin could go to zero, and I don't think that. I think it's totally
gold has
impossible
gone to zero. In a manner of speaking.
Well, under manipulation, right?
Not under forcible confiscation. The value of your gold is zero when the government literally comes and steals it.
For sure.
So that, to me, that's gold going to zero. And it has, in fact, happened in U.S. history and in other countries' history.
Right. There isn't any way around the forcible.
Sure, there is a brain wallet.
Well, no, yeah, but when we're talking about
Bitcoin,
when we're talking about physical assets, yes, there's no way around the forcible removal of your physical assets.
Right.
Except dealing with that situation in an attempt to have people not take your stuff.
Yeah.
But
luck with that, yeah.
Like that's a risk. I'm not trying to give advice, but I do think the one piece of advice that I would give is that it is time to be getting out of the system.
Yes. Yeah, I think we both agree on that. The less that you can interact with the European Central Bank or the Federal Reserve or, for forgive my ignorance, whatever they have in Canada, some sort of central
Yeah.
bank. I know they have
Yeah.
a money issuer, and it's just as corrupt as any of the rest. And, relying on that institution is just, you're going to get burned. You're playing with fire, you're going to get burned. But thanks so much for listening to another episode of Peace Propaganda. We got the final music coming up here. I hope you enjoyed it. Want to remind you that we are going to have another episode on Wednesday. I want to give away too much, but it's going to have to do with bribery. Yes. Ooh. Political bribery. And as you might imagine, as anarchists, or however we want to describe ourselves, we have a somewhat unique take on that. So there's your teaser for the Wednesday episode. Be sure to subscribe so that you get the first dibs on that. And then, of course, you can follow us on iTunes. Really appreciate that. And we have the Amazon affiliate link that you can buy anything through. And as always, if you liked something that Becky said or hated something that I said, email us at host.peacepropaganda@gmail.com.
One other thing, we're also on Podcast Land now, so if you can stop by and give us a vote, that's podcastland.com, and we're obviously Peace Propaganda. If you can stop by and give us a vote, we'd love it because we can reach more people that way.
That would be wonderful. We will have the link for that in the show notes, of course, as we will have the link for all of the music that you heard in this episode in the show notes. So, beautiful listeners, thank you so much. This was Saturday, April 12th, 2014.
Have a great week.
Ain't got no cash, ain't got no style, ain't got no gal to make you smile, but don't worry, be happy. Cause when you worry, your face will frown, and that will bring everybody down, so don't worry.
Don't